And welcome to We Rave United. My name is Louis Lecca, aka Louis Love, aka Nerd Lecca. So many names, so little time, such a short lifespan, right? We should be here longer so I can create more names. I don't know what the heck's going on. But today I am honored because this channel is starting to get some dope traction because we're trying to go on the music tip here, talking about the history of dance music all over the world, especially Los Angeles. And I have someone here who I feel is an unsung hero in the Los Angeles dance music community. He is actually the reason I am on Powertools, or some of you may know me from Powertools. He's a former or maybe current, I don't know much. I'm going to ask him right now. Director, programmer of Powertools, Gerard Meraz. How you doing, bro?
Howdy.
Howdy, bro. Yeah. You know, I've known you for a long time, a very long time, but since 92-ish to 91-ish maybe. And I don't know much about you. Actually, we talk here and there. I do want to just take this moment again, and I have done this before a long time ago, and I hope you remember. I just want to thank you for the opportunity to just taking my tape and putting it on a major radio station, Power 106 back in the day with Powertools, and I want to sincerely thank you. I'll never forget that, brother.
Hey, I'll never forget you always coming through on a clinch.
On a what?
In a clinch, like when because, you know, we got to book DJs in advance and such. And sometimes some people would cancel.
Oh, and wait, I was just a cat. I was the fall girl.
You got in because you were good.
Thanks, man.
Then you got on this very short list of guys that if somebody canceled, I could call. And more than that, one of you would have a mix ready.
Yeah, dope.
Thank you for saving the show so many times.
Thanks, man. I didn't even know that. That's great. But look, let's start from inception of your DJ career, because you continue to DJ. You are you're well versed. You're a historian with music. Every time I talk to you, you know your stuff. But so what first got you interested in becoming a DJ, and around what year was that? I know we don't want to give away the ages, but man, you look like in your 20s. So
the wires and the shirts that the guys were wearing got me into DJing. I saw a bunch of DJ setting up, and they had these boxes and boxes of wires that fascinated me, and I didn't know where all those wires were going to go, what they were going to do. But at the end, they had the wires all out and about and running this amazing loud sound system and this light show that looked like it was a UFO. And they had all put on their T-shirts or shirts like these that had like their names on the back or whatever. And I was like, that's cool. That's what got me into DJ.
The ladies didn't like kind of push you a little bit, like just a little bit?
Well, that came later. But, you know.
Yeah.
I was always an audiophile to a certain degree, to what I could afford.
Yeah.
And so seeing these guys, you know, I knew that like not one guy bought the whole system. Like this guy bought that guy bought this. And they were, you know, doing this thing to, you know, for fun or for, you know, chicks or whatever they were doing it for. But it was just such a trippy thing to see, you know, men working together to build this sound system and this light show. And it was funny because we actually had two DJ systems, and they would unplug each other so that the other one could play. They were so competitive even in those early days. And that must have been when I was in junior high. In like 84, 83. And so that's when I first saw my first DJs. I think they were in Enchante and Odyssey and maybe Black Tie. And that they had their names Black Tie on the back, or, you know, Enchante. And yeah, you had to have a system or you couldn't call yourself a DJ back then.
Yeah. And we've spoken about this. Unfortunately, like a lot of this stuff is undocumented. You know, it's people back in the day did not have flip phones. Taking a picture was like a rare occasion that everyone worshiped. Wow. Yeah. It's almost like the caveman inventing a wheel or fire back then, you know? So there's not a lot of documentation. I feel like I was kind of there. I'm a little younger than you, but I did see the disco and which we're talking about, probably disco, high energy disco, and this kind of like pre-underground rave scene before the rave started in LA that kind of we don't get credit about. Do you care to comment a little bit about that?
Well, Chicano culture has always been underground culture, you know, all the way back to the pachucos of the 40s, where, you know, we were literally criminalized and attacked on the streets for wearing zoot suits. And, you know, from there, we had, you know, this long period of music, of bands, you know, which came out, you know, El Chicano, Malo, of course, Santana, you know, this whole West Coast, East LA music scene that was thriving and doing its thing. But, you know, racism, Jim Crow laws and all that kept us underground. Like, you know, here in Boyle Heights, where I'm at, we had, you know, a very good multicultural mix. And so you had a black guy, a Chicano guy, a Japanese guy, a white guy, or a Russian, I should say, an ethnic white. And they would form these bands, and one or the other couldn't stay in the hotel because racism, you know?
Oh, shoot.
So, you know, the bands didn't go anywhere. You know, they couldn't tour. They couldn't go outside of California or, you know, friendly places. So we've always been underground. And when we went from being in bands to DJing, it was the same thing. The stories that I've gotten about that transition from bands to DJs had to do with racism as well, to a degree. Young men would get tired of going to clubs on the West Side because that's where the discotheques were at, the big ones. I mean, we had some over here, La Pantera Rosa and Turning Point, I believe, and a few others. But, you know, they would go to the Odyssey or, you know, other places on the other side of the river, so to say, and they would mess with them, you know, like, oh, it's $20 for you, or, you know, and you just charge that guy $10. Why are you charging me 20? And it's like,
wow,
you know, there was always like, you know, racism here and there. And so eventually the guys, like the band guys did back in the day, from getting blocked out of playing anywhere, they started doing their own parties. And just like always, you know, racism in this country is everywhere. We choose to see it or not, but it is the impetus to a lot of our creation, a lot of our creativity, a lot of our scenes, because we're not included or allowed to participate in the mainstream scene. So we go off and make our own.
Correct. Yeah.
So if that's underground, we were born to be underground.
Yeah, I do think I do think the East LA, I saw it. I was there. I do think, you know, no disrespect to the new ravers and on everybody which I love that scene. To me, the scene in 91 with the rave explosion was the best, but no disrespect to them, but it was already around for 10 years before that, in my opinion. Through, you know, we used to call it high energy disco, or you know, now we're finding out that's kind of like Italio disco kept the disco alive, and it's pretty much playing imported techno, you know, and house music and stuff. And they say that if you Google it, the history, you know, of house music is it's gay, Latino, and black. And that's, you know, in Chicago and stuff, that's the roots of it. But I think LA kind of like beat everybody to it, just so you guys know. Do a little bit of research. But look, you have this great article here. I'm going to try to share it, since I'm kind of like, I'm a boomer. That means you don't know technology. I think that
you're not a boomer. You're Generation X.
Let me see what the hell's going on here. Okay, let me see. Can you see this? Can you see this?
Yes.
All right. This is a great article, which I'm going to go ahead and post on the bottom in the comments here on We Rave United. It's a new channel. We're covering all things dance music and even mixing a little bit. Maybe Jerry wants to throw in a mix later. I'm even mixing. But anyways, I'm going to put in the link there so you guys can check it out fully. KCET, Gerard Meraz, background party, 1970s temporary disco, the tech. Is that the correct pronunciation here? And dude, you know, I want you to give me a little bit of a description of this. I was watching it. I was reading it actually, and I was bringing back some insane memories. All these pictures you had. What is this article about?
Well, this is a series of that I created with KCT back in 2008. It's been a while.
Yeah.
They still tell me this is their most highly trafficked website on their website.
Their story.
Yeah. And what happened was I did my master's dissertation in 2005 on the DJ culture of East Los Angeles, or of the East Side. And I had a friend of mine, well, I made a friend from that wanted to make this thesis that I wrote into an art project. So he had a gallery, and so we came up with this idea of this communal art show where, we brought in other people's sound systems, flyers, DJ equipment, various memorabilia and artifacts from the scene, because as I was doing my research on my thesis, it took me a very long time because there was no resources. There was no documentation, like you said.
Yeah.
And I even needed a review of literature of other people that were doing it, and that wasn't even out. So I needed to wait literally for the books to come out for me to use in my thesis. And in my time of research and gathering information, I realized our story is not like every other story where we have like one central figure, or one central figure is picked out and used as the lightning rod or as the vanguard or the leader of a movement. I think in LA, because of the way we are shaped and the way that we function, we have many different centers. So we have many different leaders, many different scenes, many different crews that help launch this movement or this scene. And so we took that approach of not like trying to zero in on one person and build around that person, but just open it up to everybody to bring in and tell their story about their experience in this scene. And so that show was a very successful show in downtown LA during the high time of the art scene in downtown LA. We were part of, kicking off the art walks that were very famous there for a while. And the show ran for like 6 months. We had panels, we had parties, we had workshops, we had all kinds of stuff because people were very excited about it. And, a lot of the flyers came in from different people. People donated lights, people donated speakers just to be hung up and to show the evolution of the mixers, to show the evolution of the light shows, to show the evolution of the flyer design.
Dude, I'm sorry. This is information overload. I can't get over these flyers, man. First of all, I don't know how the hell you got a hold of these flyers. And think of the passion people had, because now we get on Photoshop, and we just like spell check, everything's perfect, color correction done for you. But these flyers are hand printed, it looks like, and then taken to Kinko's or whatever was around back then and just Xeroxed.
Somebody had work detail at high school, and they would just slip it to them and they'd run it right there at school. There was no Kinko's, man.
Jeez, man, look at this. Someone drew this, right? Someone drew this.
Somebody drew that, hand drawn.
Right. And I don't know where the heck you got these, and hopefully there's some people watching this. Go ahead and link this on the comments too. If you have other flyers, maybe we could do like a flyer flashback type of thing. But I'm shocked here. Someone drew this, or it looks more like a picture.
They even have how much money they made on that one at the bottom. If you could see right there, like the money.
Wait, not much.
Everybody did it for their own reasons, and a lot of it, was just popularity and being able to be the ones to provide the music.
Right. This is all passion. This is 100% passion. There's no money involved. Yeah. Especially in that scene. A lot of these guys and gals, they did it for the passion of just having fun. There was no money in here, unfortunately.
There definitely was some money.
Yeah. And the money, like, I don't know how you look at it. It's kind of like, the reason I always wanted to get paid by DJing is so I could continue DJing, because the damn records started going up in prices, and it is what it is. You had to pay for those damn imports or the domestics and stuff like that. But this is bringing back some insane memories. And I remember, look at these towers here. My God, Jerry,
a lot of those are handmade. I mean, homemade lights. Mickey Mouse them, as they say,
Yeah, well, here's an example.
Yeah, and somewhere that's definitely this light box is definitely homemade. So we had that art show going, and this man came in named Juan Devis from KCET.
Yeah,
and he says, "Hey, man, I want to document this. Let's talk." And so he was in charge of web production, and this is what we came out with. And Juan Devis now, and KCET's web stories and stuff are like award winners. Juan Devis is like running the show at KCT in terms of a lot of stuff over there. And so it was the right time at the right place with the right people. And fortunately, yeah, they've allowed this to stay up for this many years and have people access it still to this day. A lot of people still post it and repost it because, they're barely discovering it. But, that's just a scratching of the surface of what we did in that time.
Yeah.
And what was happening at that time, and as you can see, it starts in the 70s, like it says, temporary discotheque, which is, we started, putting these discotheques in backyards. And then when the 80s comes in, then you really have a full-on culture because you had, not just DJs and promoters, but you had sound systems, you had printing companies, you had record stores, you had fashion stores, you had everything of an environment to create this scene that was based around DJing and promoting these parties.
And also, there's so much in that 70s story as I think, do you see the other one on the screen right now, the 1980s? Yeah. There's another article, by the way, that you could see, kcet.org. I'm going to put the link on the bottom, but you could also Google it. I'm sure it'll show up. But there's actually it looks like, I skimmed through the article. It looks like the very first coffin. If you don't know what a coffin is, they're that really over expensive item you put your DJ equipment on. And whoever made it didn't copyright it or whatever. So maybe skipped out on some money. But here we go. Now we're gonna go into the backyard parties of the 1980s. It's a East Los Angeles DJ culture, and you see the lovely ladies right there in their Jeep. You want to talk a little bit about this article?
Yeah, it's just a continuation. What Juan and I did is, like I said, we took the thesis and the art show and put it into this format. And I looked at the early DJs of the 70s all the way through the 2000s, and particularly the DJs that were able to evolve or continue on the trajectory of being a DJ, not someone that started in the 70s and stayed playing 70s music exclusively or became a private party DJ where they play requests, but a DJ that's constantly just moving with the music and the scenes and the evolution of this experience that we're having in dance floors. I focused on those DJs.
We're looking at the modern flyer right now on screen. Well, the modern 80s
version of the flyer. So this was typeset. So you would take this still handwritten into a print shop. Like this was either Atlantic Printing, Lion Printing over here in East LA, and I think Santa Fe Springs. And then they would typeset this for you, but you had to have it all printed out, by hand, how you wanted it, the names and everything. And then fortunately, these men, Mexicano men, usually would figure it out and add logos if you had them. And yeah, this is what we came out with in the 80s, right before Type Styler, which came out in, I think, 89 or 90. And that's when you started to get the arcs and the letters and stuff like that. But this was, basic.
And I just want a little bit of a chuckle here, but hey, look, there was nothing wrong with it back then. Things evolve, right? Wet t-shirt contest. That's not misogynist at all. The ladies would love that. Things have changed.
I mean, you could do all. I mean, I've had, I've taken this stuff into the academic setting, and yeah, we could dissect and spend days on a particular flyer looking at the misogyny. At the patriarchy, we could even look at the Anglophile, how we look up to these, names like Chabonet or.
Well, I gotta be honest. I gotta be honest with you, bro. I think we've spoken to this about this before, but maybe I'm out of line. But I feel like this, dance music culture that we're calling underground, that was in East LA, and I'm not from East LA, but I was Hollywood, so I kind of knew the vibe right here. I'm Glendale, kind of Atwater boy here, but yeah, I never understood why, if we had this awesome, rich culture of music that we kind of were supporting, why we started the culture, or the community started bringing in like this new wave rock nonsense, which I can't stand, to like ruin the dance floor for me. But I guess I'm just a hardcore dance guy,
You are a hardcore dance.
Okay.
I think it was part of that new wave invasion that we couldn't resist. I mean, it hit us on every level. You couldn't escape Duran Duran. You couldn't escape The Cure. You couldn't escape Depeche Mode. They were being shoved down our throats.
Correct.
And And yet you still, that was only on one station, on K-Rock. The pop station, so to say, what was that, KMET and Kiss FM, and they were still pushing like Michael Jackson and Prince, maybe Madonna. So this dance stuff was still underground, or
it was on K-Day, right?
Import, you know, Rock Me on the Rock and Swedish Eagle were like, you know, the guys who would bring in the fresh stuff and then make it onto regular time on K-Rock. But K-Rock was a very progressive station for its day and time, to be playing, you know, Susie and the Banshees and stuff like that. I mean, of course, we needed a station like K-Rock. I mean, we're in Los Angeles, we're Southern California. Of course, we should be playing, you know, these bands that are making noise in England or Europe. Of course, we should be. But definitely Latinos and a lot of people obviously latched onto this, you know, new wave invasion and included it into the disco, because I remember hearing Spin It mixed with Soft Cell, and Soft Cell mixing into Visage, and Visage mixing into Line.
But I started seeing it. I started seeing as the hardcore Soft Cell people, like the hardcore new wavers, like the high energy disco and the house music when they're related.
Yeah, I mean, that's the thing. There's a different mindset in the 80s.
Yeah.
Than today. We were very competitive, and everybody truly wanted to be unique. The only way you were unique is by finding stuff that other people didn't know. So to go to a thrift store and find something cool was, you know, you're the man or the girl.
Yeah.
To go to a record store and get an import that costs more and is dope that nobody else has, nobody was willing to pay for, you're on top. So there was always this element of trying to one up each other or try to be ahead of each other that I don't think we have today. I think we're more, somebody said that since the millennials, they've been trying to out-meek each other. You know, oh, no, you're better. You know, and
I'll compliment each other. Yeah.
And back then it was like, let me see what you can do. This is what I can do. Look at the records I got. Look at the clothes I got. You can't find this. What?
Just for the record is now that I'm reminded, I'm looking at this flyer, which is glorious. Wet T-shirt contest. I kind of called that out a little bit, but for the record, I entered a lot of those and lost them during the 90s. So it is what it is. I forgot about that. But anyway,
young Salma Hayek on the cover. Look at that. What would she say now?
Look at these, man. These are beautiful, beautiful stuff on this article, which again, it's going to be linked on the bottom. This one's a little bit more old school, Norwalk Boulevard. Are you in here anywhere?
Yeah. There's flyers there with my name on it, you know. But these are a collection of donations of people that heard our call to bring their stuff. You know, we really wanted everybody to bring in what was theirs, to share what they saved, to share their memories, to share their time, their contribution to this massive thing that was happening. I didn't want to say, like, you know, you hear the stories about the East Coast. Oh, Larry Levan did this, and you go to Chicago and Frankie Knuckles did that, or, you know, whoever they chose to be like their leader or their one person they're going to focus on. I was like, no, we got to talk about everybody, because everybody played a big role in this. I mean, we just function differently in Southern California. You know, I bring it up many times in this article, how our environment here, you know, we could have outdoor parties all year long. We have humongous backyards to throw big parties all year long. We're a car culture. So if one party gets busted, we just jump in a car and go to the next one and the next one and the next one. And cruising has been part of our community here since the 40s, you know.
Damn, look at how beautiful that woman is.
Yeah, that's Annette, a friend Annette Aleman, I believe, Divine Doll, or that's Karen, Karen Salgado.
Same.
Karen. Yeah, that's Karen. There's Annette. And so, yeah, we can't just say it was Tony Largo or Cesar De Niro or this guy or that guy or this promotion group or that promotion group, because everybody was involved. Everybody was doing their parties. Everybody was copying each other. I mean, some of us might argue that, the focus was in East LA because we had, the big cruising spots, Whittier Boulevard, the Lodge, the warehouses, the flat tops. And at these cruising spots is where you would get flyers and you would see these designs, you would see these DJ names and take them back to wherever you were from. And then maybe you'd copy it and do it in your neighborhood. And I have been in projects where we've tried to go around the entire city and get stories from everybody, and they're all the same. We go to South LA and we're talking to the guys who started Uncle Jam's Army, and they said, yeah, we were cruising, we got a flyer, we went to a party, we said we could do that, and they started doing it in their hood.
I remember like One Big Posse. You remember those guys? They
were in the 818, yeah. But cruising brought people together here from big distances, from the Valley to the South Bay to, here to East LA. And the flyers would get spread out and this scene would get spread out, and maybe they come and check out the party and then start doing it themselves in their neighborhood if they could, because that's when we found out what neighborhoods were rich and which neighborhoods weren't. Because if your party didn't get busted, you weren't in a rich neighborhood, because it was renters, and renters don't care, or the cops don't care if renters complain, so they let the parties go. But if you threw a party in a nice neighborhood, your party over like that, and you'd find out, oh, I guess this neighborhood's too nice for this, because the neighbors called and the cops responded right away.
You actually, I'm not going to spoil the entire article because it's a great read, even if you're not from that era, even if you're not familiar with the high energy or whatever. I do recommend you read it because it's still music culture. Just like I love, one thing I love about YouTube is actually seeing a lot of individual creators create a kind of like a history of, or a documentary, mini documentaries about house music or any other kind of music. And I enjoy it, even though I may not be into that music. I enjoy it because the creators here, YouTube's kind of giving us a chance for everybody to have a chance. Yeah. And there's some really great, talented people here. So even if you're not, or don't even know what the East LA 70s or 80s culture of music was, this is a great read. And I think even though there's a lot in there, there's still more to be done. Maybe video or something in the future and stuff like that. Some documentary, maybe you could get that going, Jerry. What do you think?
Well, there's a lot of projects going on, because there's so many different slices to look at. Do you want to just look at DJs? Do you want to just look at promoters? Do you want to look at technology? Just even looking like we just briefly said, from flyers, from mimeograph to Photoshop. I mean, that journey is amazing, and there were some key flyers that helped launch and move the technology along that people can definitely talk about, talking about mixers, from the Gemini mixer to today's Pioneer,
And it's funny because we used to do the clubs with horrible mixers, and nowadays, like, you have to spend $5,000 for one that sounds good. It's like, what the hell? Ours were like realistic Radio Shack mixers. Listen, we've been talking for a long time, so I'm going to try to speed it up a little bit. Do you still have some time with us?
Sure.
About how much time?
Whatever you need.
Oh shit! Oh, Jerry, you're gonna have more. I'm gonna have more gray hairs here on my beard by the time we're done. Look, we're gonna have to make this into a few parters. This is just the beginning. As we get into the early '90s, I want to know. Okay, so we talked a little bit. Is there anything else you want to add to the '80s before we continue? Because the '90s is what I remember you more, is what I met you with the raves and the Powertools era. So talk a little bit about that. But you want to get...
Well, let me tell you how I went from the '80s to the '90s. Literally, I grew up in South Central, but went to school out here in Lincoln Heights and the East Side.
Okay.
So my DJing was out here in the East Side, so to say, Boyle Heights, Lincoln Heights, El Sereno, City Terrace, but I lived by USC. So I was that weird guy that would have to, after all this stuff was done, I'd drive like 5 miles away. Everybody else was home in 2 minutes. I had to drive home. And often on my drives home, I'd come down the 5 freeway and transition onto the 10. And there's this turn right there where you can see the river and you could see like this warehouse zone where it's very industrial. And every now and then when I make that turn, I always look just to see, and I'd see like sometimes cars and people there out in the street, and I jump off. I'm like, what's going on, you know? And I drive off, and there were these parties going on, and there were DJs in there. And it was different because it was a lot of white people. And I had just come from a party from, you know, El Sereno or wherever, it's all, you know, raza.
Yeah.
And here is these young white kids, horrible DJs. They did not know what they were doing with the sound system. The sound system sounded, I mean, it was just bad. But they were in a warehouse, lit up on drugs, listening to some weird ass music. And I was like, okay, they're trying to do what we're doing, I think, or something. And I would just walk in and trip out and then just walk out and go home. But it was just by chance, I would just see these parties going on or starting or you know, ending. I don't know. They were, you know, it turns out these were all like Cal art students or Otis students that had traveled and seen like early raves in Europe or been to the New York clubs. And we're now trying to do something here in LA.
Yeah.
But they didn't have the DJs. They didn't have the connects necessarily that we had developed over time. And so they were very, very raw. And so it was like a trippy thing, like to think about like, hey, should I DJ here? Would they understand like being on beat? Because they seem to be having fun being off beat.
You're killing me, dude. You're killing me.
You know, because they didn't know. I mean, you know, it's like until you hear Frank Del Rio cassette and learn what mixing is supposed to sound like.
Yeah, because we're from the school, and correct me if I'm speaking for you, but I think we're both from the school of you have to make it sound like one continuous record, like, you know, at least that's the way I grew up. Yeah.
There's an element to that. There's a lot of different styles, you know, that, you know, especially with the new wave, you ended up with the slice and dice style, right? The quick mix or the quick cuts.
I never mixed that.
I know you were that guy, but that was a huge thing that I, you know, a lot of people credit Tony Largo with starting because he wanted to move into the new wave stuff and get through it. And he wanted to get right to the meat of the song and just cut it in. But there was a lot of different styles that weren't at these little parties that these kids were throwing. And I was like, okay, so am I going to be the weirdo that says you're doing it wrong? Or do I just let them keep doing what they're doing and see if they figure it out? And obviously they figured it out.
All right, so you went to this party, and did you decide to go straight to the DJ or the promoters? And did you mix there? What up?
Everybody seemed to be on drugs, you know. And yeah, I mean, we partied at our backyard parties, but these guys were like on acid, you know. Or
were they really?
Or MDMA. I mean, you go to our parties and everybody's just kind of like doing this, you know.
Yeah.
Doing a little sway with their drink in their hand, you know. Over there, they're just like. Catching butterflies and shit, you know, and I'm like, okay, they're on something else, you know. And so I really didn't interact. You know, I kind of was like a ghost. Like I even like tripped out, like how I just would walk in and walk around and walk out without them even noticing, you know, or maybe they did and they tripped out on me as much as I tripped out on them because I was, you know, in my cha-cha gear coming from a party or whatever. And so I don't know, but I ended up going to this one gig on a constant basis called The Incredible Taste of No Wax for Mica. And that was held at the Hong Kong Cafe, and the DJ was horrible. I never bothered to ask them because I just didn't want to know. But they were a trip. They'd go with these themes and decorate the place and bring in the day glow and do all these trippy things in there. And it was, again, art students and their friends that had this imagination and this creativity to pour into a party, not just like, let's get together a party. It's like, let's throw this theme. Let's build an airplane. Let's build an airplane that's been destroyed. And we're all going to look like passengers that survived it. And that was their theme one night. And then another night would be like dinner party. And they'd have like a whole formal table set up and everybody's dressed like they're going to dinner, or different party, different themes all the time. And you know, we were seeing the 80s scene take a crash.
Yeah.
Because crack cocaine kicked in a lot. and you had these little crews that had become DJ crews revert back to being just hoods, and selling crack, and then trying to throw parties to sell crack at, and the scene just really went bad. And so, it was like such a trip. Like, we hit an age where we're like, okay, we're tired of backyard parties. We're not old enough for 21 and over. Let's look at 18 and over clubs, or what are we going to do? So we started going into halls. We started going into warehouses. We started, moving on. And that's how we kind of like moved into the quote unquote rave underground of the time, because of crack and the decimation of our scene. The violence went up in the backyard parties, and I'm not saying the backyard parties ended. Of course, there were some people that it's a rite of passage, in a lot of ways on the East Side, that you have to do your backyard party time before you get to a hall, before you get to a club, before you become a resident DJ, because that was the big goal, right? As a DJ, to be a resident DJ where you can get free records or be a Billboard reporter and, get more free records. And
yeah.
So there was like this journey, like, you start off doing private parties, handle your house parties in your high school, handle house parties in your area, get into a bigger hall, get into a club, and hopefully get to a resident DJ sometime. And that's the path that we kind of had in our mind. And so we get to this stage and it's like, no, we're just going to stay in this level of warehouses and being illegal and shit. It's like, oh, I kind of wanted to play at circus. Well, that's not cool anymore. You want to play at these warehouses and shit. Yeah. And so, we had a little conflict of a little, question of our existence at that point, an existential crisis. Do we want to be Frank DeRio, or do we want to be, these playing for these drugged out people?
I think as my DJ career progressed, I opted to be both. So I knew what the Frank Del Rio stuff was, and that's my mixing style for the stuff that they would play at the undergrounds. I did get a chance to mix at a lot of like West Side underground raves, but let's just say I was a little bit more on beat than most most of the guys. What was frustrating with, but that's the schooling I got from, like you said, East LA disco and stuff, which I'm proud of. I don't give a crap. I love disco. Energy disco, sue me. You know what I mean? So, and house music back then as well. But yeah, so I got a taste of both. I never did any drugs or anything like that. I never liked them. I think the big thing is that the music was enough for me. I really loved the music they were playing at both sides and stuff like that. But that's interesting. I didn't know that about you, but this is like the prelude to Powertools, right? Where there was the underground rave scene did not like commercialism, but I did. I mean, not commercialism. I mean, having it on the radio, having the music you love on the radio, and stuff like that. So is this a little bit right before Powertools? And I'm not, by no means am I saying I like commercialism, but some records got popular. It is what it is. And they got Billboard status and they came out of the raves. But anyways, is this the prelude right before you got into Powertools?
Yeah, totally. I mean, I was going out to like these undergrounds and then to our parties and to our clubs and our friends' stuff. And so I'm seeing all this stuff happening in the city. And it was a very interesting moment, especially, pre-91, like right at 91, we start seeing a lot of these British guys coming over here because they had their summer of love, quote unquote, in 89 in England.
Yeah, I heard about that.
And they got cracked down. And so a lot of them moved over here to throw parties. And so not only in warehouses, but now you had like a place called Truth, which was at the Park Plaza Hotel. And they finally brought DJs that could mix. And you had like Michael Cook in there and Barry Weaver. I think early Mark Lewis might have been there. They might have had Doc as a guest. I'm not sure. But Truth was like a big club at the Park Plaza Hotel that took up several rooms. And that really shaped a lot of LA, that because we could all break into stuff and, various elements of illegality, or illegal parties, be it, us at the winery or at some warehouse or whatever. But now to get a venue and flip that venue into an underground vibe, that was the next stage. And the British guys got it. The British guys knew this is pop music. This is commercial top 40, Jomanda's on fucking Top of the Pops, right?
Yeah.
And the guys here that are getting it, and I ain't going to say no names, but there was a lot of DJs here that thought it was all so underground and, F you for putting it on the radio.
Yeah, that's another thing. First, I wanted to ask you real quick before, like, people are watching this for the first time, probably like, who's Jerry? I never heard of him, but I heard of Powertools and Humpty and Tony B. But it's like, what was your position? What was your title for the show? Would you say?
I was executive producer and writer, I guess. I put the show together. So Richard Vision started working. We both went to Yale ACC to study radio, and while we were studying radio, Richard started doing an internship at Power, washing the vans, handing out T-shirts and stuff like that.
Yeah.
And eventually started slipping the mixes, and they said, okay, give us mixes. That led to a gig for him at the Palace, opening for Boris and Chris, who were the big DJs at Power at the time, on a Saturday night.
Remember that?
So Richard would open up, and then they go live on the radio with Boris and Chris till midnight, and then they give it back to Richard. And Richard, being Richard, he came up with me in the high school parties, and we knew how to promote and talk to people and take care of people and, get them in and tell them to scream when, it was all, friends and stuff. So we would be like, okay, take it easy from 11 to 12, wait till 12 o'clock. And when Richard gets on, then get out on the dance floor and jump up and down and go crazy. And so we would do that. We'd make it pop when Richard was on.
Absolutely. Yeah.
And they started seeing that Boris and Chris weren't doing it as much. So they gave Richard more and more time. And eventually they said, hey, why don't you play this music on the radio at 2 a.m? You could do whatever you want. And Richard said, yeah, sure, no problem. And so he did it for like 2 or 3 weeks by himself. And he had a DJ as Richard Humpty Vision. Mm-hmm. And then he would throw in mixes as Richie Rich. And I think he even came up with another name. And then Orlando would help him and Taylor would help him.
Really? There were different names in there with the same person mixing? That's awesome.
Because he didn't go out as much as I mean, like, this is what you realize is that DJs get to their gig, do their gig, and then got to go to another gig and then go to another gig. They don't get to hang out and talk to people. That was me. I would get there and talk to people, talk to DJs and blah, blah, blah. And so Richard gets this radio show and he can't fill up the time because he doesn't know who to bring in. So he's doing different mixes under different names. And then he finally called me and said, yo, can you help me out with this? I mean, you're out all the time, these people, can you bring me DJs? I'm like, sure, no problem.
Yeah.
And so here you go. He goes, okay, can you put that onto this reel to reel and cut it like this and da-da-da-da and tell me what to say? And
oh boy, the reel to reels. Oh.
And that's how we started. It was just like by need, availability and need, and then access. I like I said, I would go out more than him and hang out more because I didn't have to run around town. So that began that journey. And I would get blowback, like I was saying earlier, from some DJs that were like, no, we're not going to play on that. That's making the music commercial. I'm like, motherfucker, this is top 10 in like England and Germany, right? And they're like, and they just run off.
Yeah, I was working on Melrose, and I would see the kind of like the snobbery.
It was ridiculous. You want to sell records, but you don't want people to know what song it is. Like, shut the fuck up. Like,
I remember
they were just as backwards wannabe trendy hipsters that thought they had something special.
Yeah.
It's like, get over yourself. It's like, get out of here. This is going to be pop one day.
Yeah. And also, like, I remember some DJs break a record in 1 week. And then since a radio station would play it the next, they were like talking about it like it's the worst thing ever and stuff. It's like, it was weird stuff like that. But I think a lot of it, now that I have this channel and I have a little bit of a voice, was a little bit or a lot jealous and stuff that they got to, you guys got to play on the radio and stuff like that. And it was like, to them, a lot of because it was like the East Side with your representation, kind of like, who are these guys? They're coming in out of nowhere and on the radio. they don't understand there was a history. Same thing with them towards them. I was DJing for years, and the DJs that would get on top billing at the raves were like people that started 3 weeks ago and actually laughing at high energy disco because they were into rock back then. So and couldn't match a beat to save their lives. You know, I remember like I know he's not from East LA, but I remember, I'll drop a name. I used to, maybe he's your friend, I'm sorry. I went to a rave once. I was like, man, I can't get these gigs. And then I saw like Kyoki or whatever his name is, couldn't match a freaking beat to save his life. And I'm like, dude, I can't compete with these people. I'm not that bad. I'm out of here. You know, that's kind of like a few of those instances where I just decided to quit DJing for a while, but I love the music. But yeah, so Jerry, you talk about this being experimental radio. You had records on Power 106, which is like top 40, going F you, F this, F that. Now that shit was on, man.
Yeah. No, well, this was before Nipplegate. You know, if anybody remembers Nipplegate when Justin Bieber pulled Janet Jackson's top down and exposed her boob at the Super Bowl.
Yeah.
And that changed everything. You know, you could, before that, you could play a FU record and this and that in the middle of the night, not regular prime time, but after hours, you could get away with whatever you wanted. And that changed after that. And
the show was very street. It was very popular with the street, like Power wanted the street people, the Latinos.
The thing is like, you know, these people that pushed back on me, which eventually came on and are now, you know, they were actually, you know, regulars on the show later on. But at first they were all like, oh, we're too good, or we want to keep it underground, blah, blah, blah. Like, you know, whatever. We'll see in a few years, you know. I always looked to who was making noise and who was bringing people. If you were throwing parties and people were going and having a good time, I'm going to ask you to be on Powertools. And that was it. I also had other requirements, like you had a DJ for 5 year or active DJ.
But you also gave people like me a chance who you didn't even know who I was. And I really appreciate that.
You could hear the mix. I had to hear your mix and see what you were doing and talk to you about it and where you got it from. And because we, you know, I think we grew up in a period, and we've dropped his name a couple of times without explaining him, but Frank Del Rio and the circus residents, let's say, you know, Mark Anthony, Peeble, Martin Rodriguez, the various DJs that played at Circus, I think helped shape Latino DJing because they were DJing there from like the late 70s throughout the 80s. And their mix cassettes, you know, would come to us through our big sisters or cousins or whoever. I've always heard that story. I'm an only child. I never got those mixes. I heard them through friends.
Yeah.
But hearing how these guys were playing at this really cool club where you would hear about John Holmes, the porn star, and Donna Summer, all these people doing drugs. And it was our Studio 54, but nobody talks about it.
Yeah.
Right? Circus was our Studio 54. And so when we heard these guys mixing like this, and then they played in La Puente, Fantasia, or Downtown Fantasia, or oh my God, if these club guys could come to a rock of the 80s, which were the original raves of LA, where you would have, you know, the Pico Rivera Sports Arena turned into a massive party called Rock of the 80s, when those guys would show up and bring a reel to reel and do this mixing that was club style, we were taking notes. I mean, there was literally people there like writing down, like he mixed it at, they're doing counts, they're writing down names of tracks, they're counting beats, you know, everybody studied what the big guys were doing. And so we weren't just willy-nilly like, oh, this record's cool, let's throw it on, you know, it's going to sound great, I'm high, you know. And like, no, we had this idea of the art or the process of DJing, I think that I think, you know, we need to maintain, you know, with the art of DJing. You know, it's not just buttons and stuff. You have to know your music. You have to know if that bass line is going to complement that bass line or cancel out that bass. Are the keys going to work? How is this going to flow? What direction are we taking the dance floor in? Like all these, you know, deeper level ideas rather than just getting the scream.
I think the best advice I think I have to provide to other DJs is dance. Go out and dance. because I think a lot of DJs just hey, I'm gonna be a DJ and mix. It's like, have you gone to the dance floor? No, I don't dance much. Gotta go and dance. So same thing with like same thing with like MMA. I know a few guys that are MMA mixed martial arts commentators, and I go, dude, you gotta take some mixed martial arts. Oh no, I don't want to. Nah, to know what's going on in the ring, you gotta implement the techniques.
You gotta know how it feels.
Yeah, exactly. So that's the thing. I wanted to also touch upon Power 106 station wanted to hit all the Latinos and be street and this and that. And Powertools got really popular thanks to you, Richard, Tony, and everyone involved. So once they started getting this like crazy popularity, being starting at midnight once a week, the station does something genius and they pull the show off the air. Because we want all the Latinos, we want all the street people to listen, but we're going to pull the show they like off the air. What do you remember about that? Because you had the most uncool people programming the damn station.
I mean,
we want to get the Latinos. We want to get the street people. How do we do it? Well, we get the most popular show and we pull it. Yeah.
I don't think that they actually took ratings at that time before us.
That's actually worse because what would they care?
They didn't know. They didn't care. They didn't know what was going on, and so I don't think they actually had numbers. But and it wasn't later on. It was pretty soon once Richard got into the Dome. Which was, I think, maybe 6 months to a year of being on the air with Powertools. Then he got the Dome, and then they pulled us. And they pulled us the same week that they fired Jay Thomas, which was their morning drive time guy. And Jay Thomas was like the Rick Dees or the Kevin and...
Oh, yeah. So because I remember then, now that you say that, it's probably because they wanted to switch to have a more of a hip-hop feeling or whatever to the station.
I never listened to Power regular time, just when we were on. So I have no idea what they did. But Jay Thomas was their man in the morning, and they fired him, or he quit because he was trying to be an actor. And he had gotten a few acting gigs in his time. But they fired him and got rid of us. And by the weekend, there was a bigger response getting rid of us in the middle of the night than there was for getting their primetime DJ in the morning. And so they were like, okay, what's going on? And since we had the Dome, people were waiting in line. Hey, sign this petition. Within 2 weeks, we turned in like 50,000 signatures. We had a stack of letters this big of people literally wrote into the station and said, what the hell are you doing? And we were back on within a week and never heard of Jay Thomas again. So,
and
then they still didn't get it. I mean, they just leave us alone. Richard would play, like you said, these explicit records and everything. And then like every 5 to 7 years, like the management would be like, yo, what's going on? How are you guys doing this? The numbers are good. They started looking at numbers.
Yeah.
And at one point, if there was 5 people listening at that time, 4 of them were listening to Powertools. It was that big. And
meaning 5 people on the radio, meaning 5 people listening to radio.
Yeah.
1 out of 5 listening to Powertools, which is
4 out of 5. 4 out of 5 are listening to Powertools.
4 out of 5. Oh, okay. Yeah. Then that's huge. That means that all 4 out of 5 people available during the night were listening to Powertools, but they still chose to
no, this is later on. This is like in the mid '90s when we had those numbers. And they still wouldn't, because it's a different world. So we would sometimes take them to a Richard gig, Yeah.
Okay,
so program manager, music director, station manager, we're going to send you a car. They're going to pick you up at the station. They're going to bring you to this party so you can see what we're doing. And we give them the VIP, pick them up in a limo, drive them over to a gig. Right before Richards goes on, come on up on stage, and they just be like, wow, oh my God, you guys got all these people just with the radio show? And we're like, well, yeah, of course.
Yeah, try doing your research.
There was a flyer involved and a promoter involved, but we made it seem like, oh yeah, we just announced it on the radio and got all these people. And they just said, just keep doing what you're doing. And they'd leave us alone for another 5-7 years, to just keep doing what we're doing.
So you kind of like, you did that for how many years?
Oh man, I did it for 20 years.
Wow. Did you decide to just retire, or what's the deal with that? If you want to talk a little bit about.
I mean, there's a lot of personalities involved, a lot of big personalities involved in the show, and we all have different perspectives of the scene. At this point, you have Richard and Swedish Eagle hosting. Swedish Eagle brings a very international vibe to it. Richard brings a very national vibe to it. And I'm still looking at what's happening in LA. For me, it's all about LA. What's happening in our streets is going to happen everywhere else. And this was like right before the advent of EDM. And I was damn sure not going to say, oh, we're an EDM show. I was like, you're crazy. We're Powertools and that's that. You don't got to say we're America's EDM show or a house.
Are they calling it EDM right now?
No, I would hope not. I don't think anybody uses that anymore. But that kind of died, 5-7 years ago?
EDM to me, like when I started, look, I gotta be honest with you, Jerry. I stopped DJing for a while, and when I started hearing the EDM, I was all right with it. But it's a little bit of a mix between kind of like commercial techno and Euro pop. So that's the way I look at it.
It's very formulaic.
Yeah.
You hear one, you heard them all.
Yeah, and that style, what they're calling EDM, is kind of faded out at this point, but it is what it is. I used to I have an interview here with Rondi Core, and I don't know if you listened to it. I call EDM. I call EDM and the pop, because there's always been EDM pop commercial formulaic music even before this, but before EDM, I call it the gateway to the real underground. So like a person who's kind of like doesn't really like the underground real Doc Martin stuff will listen to EDM and go, hey, I kind of like that. And then go to an EDM club. And then on the side, there'll be a room where the real DJs are. Maybe they'll walk in there and go, I like that. This is better. And then stay there. You know what I mean? It's kind of like I started with.
In an ideal world.
Yeah. Well, that's my history is kind of like that, CNC Music Factory to Black Box. And then I'm dancing a Black Box.
And then you end up with Joey Beltran.
Oh, someone dropped, dude. I remember right on time, whatever. And then all of a sudden, man, some DJ went on and drops music, maestro, please. T99 Anastasia. Yeah. I was like, what the hell is that? And then everybody was like, da, 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 da. I go, this is what I need. This is what I need. This is what I want. But it was Black Box who got me. CNC who got me into it. So it is what it is. But yeah, would you, so what are you doing now? Let's, we've been on for probably an hour. We're going to have to do this, continue this, and we'll probably break this one up into a few segments. There's a lot to talk about, maybe like your Powertools experience, but do you have a lot of memories of that? You got to see a lot of stuff, gave you access to maybe stuff going through Powertools and a lot of good times. Come on, man. Every week I would get to meet some of the coolest DJs, hear some of the coolest music. Yeah. And talk to them, not just on the air, but, before the show or after the show, and hear about the different scenes and the different sounds and hang out and really like understand like where they're coming from and what they're experiencing on their dance floors and what they're seeing in this state or that state. And, we're all just really music nerds or tech nerds or some kind of nerd. Yeah. Able to memorize all these freaking labels and stuff and all these knobs. Everybody's some kind of nerd, and we just geek out together when there's not the crowd around and not the lights and the speakers making us scream into each other's faces. We could actually just chat. So it was a great time, learning from everybody, hearing everybody's version of their story, So yeah, lots of great experiences, and from the top to the bottom, from interviewing Little Louis Vega to the Powertools DJ contest kid that turned into Mix, that's 15. Yeah, I remember that. Like what got you into it? Holy shit, dude. I gotta say this. Like, we could just go through Powertools memories. I remember that you guys had 1200 set up right next to the studio. And I was mixing. It was freaking live, bro. Like that was a big deal back then. You know, the mix your 1200s connected to the Power 106 studio, which Power 106 is a massive station. Just so you guys know, it's corporate Pepsi promoting.
MS Broadcasting.
Yeah, if they're even around. But yeah, I don't like radio anymore. So I'll kind of like tell it like it is. I think but yeah. As far as that was cool that they let you guys do that. But man, I remember I was DJing and then I go, someone goes, hey, if they wanted to hire you, Lewis, where could they get a hold of you? And I go, well, you could send me a page or call me on my beeper. And I gave out the number, and it was so weird back then because right away my beeper started going fucking nuts. I was like, fuck, I'm on the air live on Powertools. Holy shit, man. You know? And so, but yeah, look, LA dance music's always been dicked around, and there's not a fucking, and sorry, bro, for the cussing here, but there's not a dance station in LA, like a dedicated dance station. What's wrong with you guys?
They are. They're just not. They're not in English.
Oh, really?
when we started Powertools, and I learned this, and it's been consistent ever since. Mm-hmm. You're talking about radio, like turn on that radio, terrestrial radio in LA. Spanish language radio has dominated since like the late 80s.
And they're playing house music, right?
The top 5 radio stations in LA in terms of numbers, period. Not 18 to 25-year-old white kids or these little subcategories. They break it down to just numbers. The biggest ones have been Spanish-speaking stations. And that's it. You know, if you want to,
some of them are actually they were playing some dance music. I kind of stumbled across.
Yeah. Like, we were always going to dance. You know, Latinos are always going to have dance music of some kind. Be it banda, be it whatever you want to call it, even EDM. EDM banda norteño mix. Whatever, it's going to be there. But that's just the reality of it. And then it's sadly you look at the rest of the stations on LA radio, and they're all retro. They're all some kind of flashback.
It's so weird because I haven't listened for almost since 99-ish, 98, 99. Yeah. And when I turn on like a Power or a Kiss, I know every song. I could sing to it.
No, those are the pop.
Because they play the same thing over and over again.
Yeah, those are the corporate stations that are playing the corporate pop, the corporate stuff that's shoved down your throat everywhere. That's going to be in a commercial. It's going to be at the Grammys, etc. Right. And then the rest is nostalgia and then Spanish language. And the Spanish language have the numbers, and that's where the money's at.
Yeah.
It's always been at. And so it's a trippy environment, again, the invisibility of Latino culture, the invisibility of our needs and wants and likes in terms of music is totally ignored and totally not even talked about.
Well, like I said, Powertools getting good ratings, in my opinion, or even placed in a time where you don't need the ratings, 2 p.m. or 1 whatever on Saturday night. And they pulled it. They pulled it. And the people that were programming the station, I know they were trying to get, that's the exact same audience they claim to be wanting. So what do? They pull a show that has that audience. That's the way I saw it.
I remember when Power came on, and we were doing our parties. We were doing back halls and stuff at this point. And this was the first time we had to listen to the radio to know what to play. I remember buying Will to Power. And that was the first record that I heard on Power, and then went to go buy at the record store.
Say It's Gonna Rain?
All my other records, I would go to the record store, and the guys would be like, here, listen to this. And then I'd pick it out. Okay, I'll take these. And then maybe one of those you'd hear on the radio. But after Power came on and they got, all these street DJs working for them, and they were in LA looking at what's happening, they started telling us what to play. And that's when I said, okay, this is when we got to change. And that's when house came up, but Will to Power was the first and last record I bought that I heard on Power first.
I like Will to Power though. You just reminded me of that.
Not, but it's Arista. It's not his pop,
yeah. But it's still kind of dance electronic-y. Dude, so we're in the 90s. Dude, listen, we're going to, I think we're going to have to break this interview up into going into the 2000s for next time. I'm going to break this this interview up a little bit because we're like an hour and a half, and I could go an hour and a half more, man. But I can see.
It's really 12. We started at
what time did we start?
11, no?
And then you say, well, look, what is what would you like to, would you ever return, have a reunion with all the Powertools people? Has that been done? I don't even know.
I'm personally not into the retro or reunion thing. I mean, I'll participate if someone does it. I'm not going to spearhead it. I have my own project right now called the Cha Cha Chili. We produce music with the dance floor in mind, and we go all over the place from techno to disco to house, in our interpretation of it. So I'm about the new stuff still. I'm still about pushing forward. I mean, like I said, why do I want to be an old radio station in LA? We got enough of those. I want to produce new stuff and keep pushing this forward and be able to talk about, we're talking about mixing and quality mixing and the art of this all, not just the money or the fame or the names, but are you talking about the art? Do you know your history? Do you know where it came from? Do you know where it can go? Is this just a trend? Is this just, frat rock for you at this moment, frat house or frat techno? That's how we called EDM, frat techno, because it was geared towards this, mainstream fraternity row vibe. And it wasn't, like you said at the beginning, this was underground, black, brown, gay, marginalized communities that were, had no other place to do this, were rejected.
And I want to add my perspective. Everyone's welcome. Yes, it was like you said, everyone's welcome. And that's why, I don't really do we talk about like social issues nowadays, and I don't understand hatred towards people. And when people ask me about like, oh, this person, it doesn't compute. I almost look at them like Spock, because I did go on a dance floor, and the dance floor is the real, in my opinion, the real melting pot. So I tell people, like, if you hate people, you have stereotypes, go out and freaking dance at a house club, because you'll see everyone under one beat, dancing and stuff. People will proudly display their flags from everywhere, and there's never a fight. Not that I've seen, right? That's just my experience. So since the late 80s, we've seen gay, we've seen straight, we've seen black, white, everything.
We've seen drag queens, everything.
The trans community to me is old news. So for people to right now saying, hey, how could you hate someone who's trans? We've been dancing with them since.
The bathroom issues, like, go to a club. You'll see everything in a bathroom.
It's like, it's weird.
Bathrooms, go to a club bathroom. You'll see.
Yeah, that's why to me it doesn't really compute all this. Like, oh, I don't get this, I don't get that, dude. I've been doing that for 30 years, man. Get out of here. Welcome to the party. But this is all old news to me, and that's what the music's about.
Real house, real techno has been woke.
Yeah, no. Yeah, it's been woke. Correct. And if you listen to the music, I try to explain it to newcomers to the music, is like, if you listen to dance music, techno, house, it's almost like every music crashed into each other. And that's why you get the house, to me, like, especially from the late 80s, it's almost like kind of like tripping on itself, like doom, ta, 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 like sounds coming in from over there and then coming over here, and then a vocal drop from like an old classic rock. And then back to disco, it's like, what the hell? And then hip hop, and then drum it, again, another bass line, whatever. So it's like everything crashed together, and the dance floor and the community, I think, reflects that. I don't know. That's my assessment.
Totally.
Yeah.
No,
Jerry,
we are a generation of mixing stuff. And because of technology, we're able to mix everything. We have these synthesizers, we have these computers, we have these samplers that we can take from everything and anything.
Yep.
And still come up with something new and put them all together.
Yep. So we're gonna leave off right here, because I don't even know if I gotta cut this for YouTube 1 hour. But could I ask you a couple more questions? Would you come back?
Sure.
All right. That's number one. Good. Number two, would you submit a mix for us?
Sure.
Or you could actually do it live if you want for We Rave United. Would you do that?
Sure.
Okay. And then what was number 3? Shit, I forgot. Maybe it was a lie. I don't know. Shit, I forgot what it was. Oh, yes. Would you like to add anything else before we conclude this segment?
Just thanks for the opportunity, man. And keep doing it.
No, man. I owe you, man. People always go Louis Love from Powertools and this and that. And you gave this nerd a freaking chance with a little shitty tape. Me bugging you over there. I think I gave you the.
You always had skills. You could see it in all your work. You got skills.
Yeah, man. I do love the music. I blame my mom because she introduced me to Saturday Night Fever when I was a kid. So there's the way it goes. Gerard Meraz, dude. Thanks for the interview, and we'll be back with more soon here on We Rave United. Don't forget to follow me at DJ Louis Love on Twitter if you can. And where do they follow you? Do they have a place to follow you?
Go to the Cha Cha Chili at Instagram.
Nice. I love that. All right. To our next interview video. See you soon.